Hi, this is Paul Shortino from King Kobra. You're listening to Focus on Metal with Scott Thompson.
Focus on Metal!
Hey, Metalheads, Scott Thompson here, welcoming you to episode 573 of Focus on Metal. Got yet another long one for you this week as Richie sits down and talks with vocalist Paul Shortino. Yep, that's right. The voice up on the front of the episode is actually the guy we're talking to in the episode for once. So we've had Paul on the show a whole bunch of times. Always great to have on. And I think that he might even rival Wild Mick Brown for the longest answers to any questions asked. And that is a pretty hard feat to actually do. But as usual, Paul's got a whole crap load of stuff going on. That seems to be his life, which I guess is pretty cool. And the primary reason Paul is with us this week is because there's a brand new King Kobra album out. It is called We Are Warriors. And that has obviously got Paul on vocals with Carmine Appice on the drums, Carlos Cavazzo and Rowan Robertson on guitars, and Johnny Rod on bass. So that is the primary reason that Paul is with us this week, but obviously we'll go through a whole bunch of other stuff with him as well. Other things that he has coming out, some things he had that came out during the pandemic that he's kind of given a heads up of, hey, didn't really happen because of what was going on, so maybe I'm going to give it a brand new shot. What's going on with Rough Cut? What's going on with Rock Meets Classic? Like I said, this guy is very, very busy. So this week, as usual, when Richie's talking to somebody like Paul, we'll get into the new stuff. We'll get into some old stuff as well, dig a little bit into the history vaults. But overall, it's a very long, a very good chat with Paul. And one other thing as well, I just want to get you warned up front so you're not like in firm what the fuck territory. But between Richie having some technical stuff, Paul having some technical stuff, which got to be kind of a running joke with the two of them during this. There's a couple of times where he drops out. They have to restart again, but I kind of left it in there pretty much warts and all. But having said all that and knowing that this is going to be a long one, I'm going to turn it over to my buddy Richie and Paul Shortino.
Hey, buddy.
Yeah, Paul, you back?
One of my in-ears fell out, so it disconnected me. I'm sorry about that.
No, you're cool. You're cool. So you want it? We'll get into the interview. Is that okay?
Yeah, I'm ready whenever
right.
you are.
I got a lot of questions. So the first question I always ask the singers, like yourself, how has your voice changed over the years, and how difficult has it been to adapt to the changes?
Actually, my voice, I perform every Saturday when I'm not out touring and everything or recording in the studio. I keep my voice in shape doing all kinds of different songs, including my own material, at a French restaurant that sits on a lake here in Las Vegas. So for the last 3 New Years, after COVID, they called me, and I've become very good friends with the owners, and they're very cool people. And so I just went in recently because I've been touring with this thing called the Icons of Rock and Roll. And in April of next year, I'm doing Rock Meets Classic. And some of the people on the bill are Scott Gorham and the other guitar player from Thin Lizzy. Also Manfred Mann. There's quite a few different people that are performing on this, where they have a rock band and then they have an orchestra. And we're doing arenas in April. But I'll be doing Stay With Me Tonight, Come On, Feel the Noise, and Bang Your Head. These Icons of Rock, we've been touring South America with Wally Palmer from the Romantics, Alex Leverwood from Santana, who did I'm Winning, Dave Pickler, who did Eye of the Tiger, Johnny Edwards, who joined Foreigner after Lou left. He was the first actual singer to replace Lou. And Fran Cosmo, Dave Evans. Fran was with Boston for a while, and Dave Evans. But it's been a great show. It's about 3 hours. We've been playing arenas and stuff in South America. We played Bolivia, Mexico. We're supposed to do Peru, Argentina. So between that and me keeping my voice in shape, playing acoustic, and just doing any kind of song I like, anywhere from Billy Joel's "I'm in a New York State of Mind," and old standards from Sinatra and Etta James, and so I keep my voice in shape, basically. Doing all kinds of different types of music, and try to keep myself busy. I'm fortunate I have a studio out here, and my voice, I keep messing with it. There's different textures of my voice. I did a song called "I Feel Fine," and it's in a lower register of my voice, where it's I woke up this morning to the falling rain. So it's a different texture of the voice. I'm very fortunate that I have different textures of my voice, because I woke up this morning to the falling rain. So it doesn't, whatever fits the song is what I but I've been very fortunate considering a lot of my friends. Well, look at Glenn Hughes. He bounced back. David retired, David Coverdale, one of my favorite singers. Paul Rogers still sounds the same. He's taking care of himself and his voice. And I just try to take care of myself and my voice, and I've been very blessed. God has blessed me to be able to keep my voice. I'm right now thinking of doing a gospel Christian kind of record. Kind of what Elvis did, It was one of his largest selling records ever, doing a gospel record. And so I kind of wanted to do that, and just reach out to different parts of my upbringing and what I love in music. My mother was a singer, so I grew up listening to Funny Valentine, some Tony Bennett, and my dad loved music, but he couldn't sing or play music, but grew up to Sinatra, Dean Martin, Al Martino, a lot of the Italian singers. And my dad loved all kinds of music, so I was very fortunate. My mom's side of the family was all into music. I had a great uncle that played banjo, guitar, ukulele, and her whole side of the family, my mother's side of the family, were involved in that. And she was Scotch, I was German, and my dad's Sicilian, so I don't know what I have in me from that side. That might be the soul that I have from the Moorish, the Moors invading Sicily. But I grew up listening to a lot of different kind of music. I loved R&B. I loved Sam Cooke, Marvin Gaye, David Ruffin. Some of those guys and Stevie Wonder were my biggest influences, other than Paul Rogers and Steve Marriott and Robert Plant. All those guys are brilliant, So it was playing in clubs for a long time. When I got Rough Cut kind of together, was formed, and Ronnie Dio got involved, I was playing in a lot of cover bands and clubs in Los Angeles. So I was sounding like, one that is the fire, trying to sound like Steve Perry, trying to sound like Lou Gramm was one of my favorite singers, but trying to emulate the people that, I was doing a song of in the club circuit. So it took me a while to find who I was, and Ronnie was trying to bring that out in the studio with me, and I found myself trying to be like him when I started singing, you know, except for the stars thing. That's when I started to really find who Paul was. And having a studio at the house, you're able on your own time to hone in and find who you really are. But I think that a singer, a performer that's behind the glass and there's someone in the other room, I think you try to do your best. Not to say that you're not doing your best in the studio, because you can go in the studio and do one line at a time, and you go into a recording studio and you're under a time frame and, you know, how much money you're spending and whatnot. So you can get a little bit more, you can redo your song to where you're looking up your hind end when you have it in your own studio. So, you know, it's kind of nice to have someone on the other side going, hey, I know you can do this. Come on, push it a little bit harder.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Yeah, Paul.
So anyways, I'm just really grateful that I do have a studio and I was able to co-produce this record. They all actually dropped it. If I was going to be the producer totally and Pat Reagan was going to mix the record, but when I started sending Pat files after they all showed up in my studio, Carmine's drums, Johnny Rod flew out from Florida to play his bass. And then Carlos did all his recording in his studio, and Rowan came over here, and we worked collectively on ideas. And that's how the record, it took over a year to put this thing together. And after we did that record, Michael Voss, who produces Michael Schenker, says, I've got some material that's not heavy metal. It's kind of like Police and Zeppelin. And so I got Carmine and Phil Susan interested in maybe, you know, doing something. So we finished that project in 30 days. So it was like...
Nice.
But the King Kobra record, it came out really good. It's the first thing, Bob Daisley's on there as a bass player as well. I believe he did Trouble. And
Paul, how did Bob end up playing on the record?
That was Carmine's idea. He wanted to reach out to Bob and ask him to, seeing how they played with Rod Stewart. So he wanted to bring him in. And also on Dancing, it's the first time that Tony Cavazzo and Carlos recorded the song together, you know, so. So some of the stuff I had to go in, and I played bass for a long time, and I played guitar and whatnot, but side by side I wrote, it's on the CD, it's not on the vinyl, and Carmine came up with a little bit of a drum vibe, so I gave him some credit on that. But that was a song that was sitting around, and I pretty much played the 12-string on that, and which is in the verse. And then the other guys just added some stuff to it. And it's really crazy how the whole album came together.
Paul, are you surprised that you're doing a new King Kobra record? Like, it's been a 10-year break.
Well, you know, I was kind of surprised seeing how in between during the COVID time, I put out a Rough Cut 3 album with that's on DDR Music Group that Matt, Amir, and myself did alone. And because Chris and Dave were decided to reform Rough Cut, and I got a call from Matt and Amir, and they said, you know, we recorded these songs that they're releasing, and they're releasing it with a different singer. And I came up with the name Rough Cut, and so they called me and said, hey, would you mind I said, well, let me hear the vocals that I recorded in 2017. And we did a Rough Cut 3 the first time in 30 plus years, and released it. And then after that, I did a record with, during COVID, Tracy G, and we titled it Blue Dahlia, and it's kind of like Gary Moore meets Led Zeppelin kind of vibe. It was really cool. We did a record, and then I found some tracks of Bad Boys after I departed from Quiet Riot. I put the band together. I had a solo deal and could have done the record myself, but I decided to make it a band, and instead of it being Paul Shortino's solo album after leaving Quiet Riot. And then I had a tape that was sitting in a DAT for over 30 years, and it's been sitting in the heat, and I pulled it out, and it's a song called King of Thieves. Never been recorded, so this company, DDR Music, released Blue Dahlia, and they also released this Bad Boys CD. So I did a lot of work while COVID was down. Thank God I had a lot of stuff to do in the studio. And the Rough Cut 3 was really accepted well. There was this, on Spotify, there was a song that went 65,000 plus, kind of viral, that said "Don't Say a Word," and they used it for some commercial or something on Spotify, whatever, how you say that. And you know, so I that was the first time we did something in a long time, and it came out really good. The projects I did while COVID had the world shut down was kept me busy. And then Carmine, out of the blue, asked me if I would be interested. Before that, I got a call from these people that were affiliated with Radio Rock Vault, and said that they had this thing called the Icons of Rock. Would I be interested in touring with these singers and this incredible band, the players that have played with everybody, and back, you know, two chick singers and Dexter Espinosa, who he actually worked with Bobby Kimball for a long time. So I was doing that. We've been playing, 20,000 seaters, festivals down in South America and Mexico. So after finishing those records, all of a sudden, I'm out touring, and but Carmine reached out to me just as COVID finished and said, "Hey, let's do." Cleopatra wants to do a King Kobra record because the other two records were on Frontier, and Carmine was doing some stuff, and Cleopatra were interested. I actually did a record and released it with Doug Aldridge was on it, Phil Soussan, Jay Schilling on drums, pretty much anybody that was in Raiding the Rock Vault. I had a guest appearance on my record called Make a Wish that was released out of Japan, and we did a remake of Sending the Clowns and Carrot Tops in the video, and Tabitha Stevens. It's on YouTube. It was released April 24th, just before they shut down the world with COVID. So it was a bad time to release that record. Great record. Peter Boltz is on it from Accept. He does an incredible bass solo on this song called Vegas. And I'm trying to think who else is on the record. There's so many people that is on that record that I was sure it was going to do well, and it probably would have done well. And the videos they're way beyond what we expected. Tabitha's husband did some Showtime stuff, so he came in with his equipment, and the lighting people who do all the Mystere stuff did the lighting on this. I had a vision of it being completely black with lighting and fog and stuff, and the video came out great. Denny Paul played drums on this. We cut this drums in this song years ago, and Ira Black came up with the arrangement, and then we recut it for my album Make a Wish, and Marco Mendoza played bass on it, and this Nozuma Waki, this guitar player from Japan, has played with Ronnie Romero, has done a lot of stuff, did the guitar work, and we wrote songs together. It's a really good record. It's a shame it got kind of, just buried because of COVID, but, I'll re-release it down the road. But, Carmine called me out of the blue, and we went through guitar players. Mick didn't want to do it. Dave Hemserling didn't want to do any more records with King Kobra after the last one he did.
Paul, are the reasons Mick and David aren't on the record, are they the same reasons, or are they both different?
What do you mean the same reasons?
Like, David didn't want to do a record because the last one, and Mick doesn't want to do a record. Are they the same? Do both of them just not want to do the record for the same reason, or do they have different reasons for not doing it?
I think, on the last two records, Mick didn't really put too much effort into it, and then we did the Have a Good Time video at Vamped, and I had a bunch of people in it, where Carrot Top, Denny Paul was in the video, Zach Wilde, Ace Frehley. It was a great video, but it was about the club in Vegas called Vamped that everybody goes. It's the best rock and roll club, and Danny Coker from Counting Cars, it's his joint, and his wife runs it. And so, we did the video there, and then we did Sweden Rock Fest. It didn't turn out as good as we hoped it would, because the band hadn't been playing together for very long. And so, I think the reason is why Mick didn't want to do another record, because he rejoined Bullet Boys, but I don't know. That was for a while, right after we did the second record.
Yeah.
David he wanted to just travel. He really didn't want to do music anymore.
Okay.
And, that was what the impression I got, because me and David did the second album. We did a lot of the work on it. And he just thought it was going to be too much work, and I can tell you, it was a lot of work. Being the hub for everybody's files, the way this record came down is we would put ideas down, or Carlos would send his, say, a finished song with a click track. Then I'd send that to Carmine, stems with a click separately, and then he'd cut his drums. Then he'd send his drums back to me, and then Carlos and Rowan would have to cut their guitar parts to the drums. I did all of the demo bass parts, because we didn't, Johnny didn't have access to a studio, so I would lay bass parts down. And so basically that's why the record took a long time, is because we would collectively, me and Rowan would sit here collectively, and I would hum some ideas to him, and he would play them his way, and then we would, record those and piece those ideas together. And even his solos, Carlos did all his stuff at his home, and some of the stuff we collectively would talk, and him and Rowan. There's some solos on the album that Rowan's doing one part. There's a few things they do collectively, but very little. And it was a lot of work. It came to me, and then I had to have those guys play their parts clean, because Pat Reagan wanted to mix the songs, not just with their guitars having their effects on them, but also he wanted a clean guitar so he could run it through something, a plug-in that he had in his system that supposedly Richie Blackmore really liked for his guitar sound. And I guess he had certain programs that he wanted to run the guitar through clean so that when he did mix it, they stood out frequency. So, I left the mixing up to him, and then I decided he was doing some really cool stuff, and so I relinquished some of the production on that and gave him credit on that because he was doing some really cool stuff, and I thought, that he should get credit for those kind of ideas, but the production part of it, I pretty much did a lot of it because I did a lot of that writing, all the melodies and lyrics and everything. I pretty much, except for a little bit. And Robbie Lochner, who plays with, he was going to be in the band, but he was touring with Jack Russell.
Yeah,
that's how I got Carlos, or I think it was Carlos or Rowan involved in the project. So he actually put some ideas down. He wrote one of the songs on the album. I think it was Drive, musically. So it was kind of a really interesting way to do a record. It took a long time because of the process, but it got everybody playing to the drummer instead of the drummer, because Carmine plays around a click track. He doesn't play to a click track. The click's going, and he's playing grooves around that click like if it was another instrument.
Yeah. So Paul, it was you then that brought Carlos and Rowan to the project, because you got a past history with both of them. Like Rowan with Raiding the Rock Vault, and of course Carlos with Quiet Riot.
Yes. Yes, we were going to use somebody. He wanted to use Robbie Lochner, and then he also wanted to use a young guy that replaced Nick, and Jordan. I can't think of his last name right now, but he's a young, up-and-coming great guitarist. And I said, well, let me reach out. I think this King Kobra would really be cool if we had made it a super group, pretty much. With those guitar players, and they're so different.
Paul, you had a band a few years ago called Rough Riot, and it fizzled out. It was you, Carlos, I think Sean McNabb, Chris Hagar and Dave Alford, wasn't it? What happened to that band?
Well, what had happened was I got a phone call one day. It was my idea to put this band together. So what I did, I went out, I got an LLC and put everybody on there as an equal member of the LLC, which I'll never do again because I did the same thing with Rough Cut. I should have owned the name. It was my idea to put Rough Cut, because I was in Rough Cut along with the two guys, Chris and Dave, and Riot. I was in Quiet Riot with Carlos and Sean McNabb. So I figured, okay, this would be a great project to combine some of the songs that I had recorded with Carlos and Sean, and also with Dave Alford and Chris in Rough Cut. So we combined some Rough Cut songs that fit and some Quiet Riot songs that fit. Of course, the hits, I don't sing like Kevin. Kevin was a great singer in his own right, and I never ever tried to take his place, even though I was in the band. We sing totally different, and I still don't even sing those songs the way he sang them, because I want to do it my way, and I'm not giving justice to "Come On, Feel the Noise" Kevin's way, which is a Slade song anyways, or "Mental Health." Mental Health is more in my bluesy vibe because I'm more of tend towards the blues rock kind of side. And so what happened to that band was I get a phone call one day. We did a few. It was basically set up for working purposes, to get out and play, and hopefully that we could write some new material together. But people being in different states, I being in California or Las Vegas, and all them in California, I'm having really the only major studio. To get everybody together to come up here it was just really hard to write music. So guys were getting frustrated, and two guys that got really frustrated were Chris Hager and Dave Alford. And at the same time, Sean and Carlos were a little frustrated that Dave and Chris, when we did rehearsals, weren't getting the groove and doing the parts close enough to the Quiet Riot stuff that we were doing. So, and Rough Cut stuff was being played fine. So those guys called and said that they didn't want to play with those guys, and the other guys, Dave and Chris, didn't want to play with Sean and Carlos. And so I had to make a decision. And I said, well, they didn't know that those guys didn't want to work with those guys either. And it was nothing personal. It was just, things just weren't flowing like they should when you have a project. So we spent months trying to get the name back, because I had put everybody down on the LLC, and they weren't going to sign off, Dave and Chris, and let go of Rough Riot. So we were in litigation over something that really wasn't making any money, but I personally, seeing how I came up with the name, it was the matter of principle. And, to me, that they should just relinquish the name. And I was putting out, at that time, I was just getting ready to release. I was just having the mixes back from Make-A-Wish, the Japanese record that I released on Ward Records. And so I played them a couple tracks. And so while we were in litigation for Rough Riot, Dave and Chris, behind Matt and Amir and myself, were going after the rights to have the name Rough Cut. So that's how we came.
Focus!
We lost each other?
Yeah, your in-ears fall out again, Paul?
No, I don't know what happened.
The line just went dead.
Where we were at? Where were we?
Where you finished was Chris and Dave went after the name Rough Cut.
Okay, yeah, they went after the name Rough Cut. And so Amir and Matt and myself are the majority. So they put out a video of Bed of Black Roses, or we did a song called Bed of Black Roses, and they came out with a video called Black Rose. Well, these songs were written in 2017 and the Rough Cut guys. We all agreed that we would never, ever play with other members. We always would, like other bands, they get members in, and they go through members. Look at like King Kobra, okay? Well, Rough Cut made a pact that we would never do a record or go out and try to do anything without the original players that were recorded on Warner Brothers. Because we had a lot of original players in Rough Cut. Jakey Lee, Greg Golding, and guitars, Claude Schnell, and Christopher Pinelli, who was in Rat at one time. We had quite a stable of players that were in the band before we were signed to Warner Brothers. So we all made a pact that the guys in Warner Brothers that were on Warner Brothers would, never go out without. So what they did behind our back, they came out with a video. So Matt and Amir said, let's just, Paul, check out your vocals, see if we want to change anything on your vocals that you recorded in 2017. And so I fixed some things, and we released a Rough Cut 3, the first one in 30-some years, and it was a good record.
Paul,
and Carlos played on it.
Yeah.
Which was cool. And so those guys finally relinquished, kind of dissolved. They did a few gigs and they dissolved. Once our record was released through DDR Music Group, they kind of just dissolved, and it was over.
Yeah.
Because we got an attorney and they couldn't go on with the majority of guys, me, Amir, and Matt, against Dave and Chris. I mean, we had the majority vote. However, both Matt and Amir said, Paul, if anybody should ever go out and sound like Rough Cut, it could be you. Because you could put a band behind you, and it's your voice that's recognizable to Rough Cut fans. So, anyways, that came from those guys. And I said, I would never do that. It's just, I've never went out to do that. Even when I did a couple solo records, I did,
Yeah. Paul, what sort of relationship do you have now with Chris and Dave, if any?
I haven't spoken to him. Dave moved to Carolina, and I haven't spoken to Chris. I don't hold anything against him. You know what? Life's too short. I'm not that kind of a person.
Yeah.
I don't hold anything to anybody. I think they could have. I told them, and Matt and Amir said the same thing. If you guys want to go out as Chris and Dave's Rough Cut, that's cool with us, because then you're not deceiving the fans. But when you're going out as Rough Cut and you're showing old footage of all of us, then when fans come to see the band, they're not seeing the original members. And so I think that's what was the big deal with. I could have cared less, to be honest with you. If they really wanted to go and do that, that was fine. Because really, Rough Cut is like a cult following of we missed the big window, even though we were signed earlier, and for some of the bands that made it big during that time period. We waited a year for a producer. Ted Templeman had signed the band, so we waited a year to get a producer that was going to produce the band. And during that time, timing's everything when it comes to music, movies, whatever. And we missed that tour. It shut down with Tipper Gore's slapping on we lost our A&R Tom Wally to Capitol. Just after they signed us, so we had nobody rooting, tooting for us, and we were out on a huge tour with Ronnie. That was actually the Sacred Heart tour, but we first went out with Crocus and Accept, and then did a West Coast leg with just Accept. Became really tight with those guys, and I did the Spinal Tap thing during that tour. And we couldn't get a line check, and the Crocus saw the movie, and they found out that I was in Rough Cut, and they said, can we meet Duke Fame? And then we all of a sudden got a line check, and it's kind of funny how that movie has opened up a lot of doors for me in such a small part. But But anyways, I'm still good with those guys, and I really didn't care if they, like I said, we had a cult following. If they wanted to go out, even with King Kobra, it's like starting over because it's been years. So to go out and tour, you got to do the pay your dues thing again. You might get on some festivals, but you're gonna play clubs. You're not gonna do any arena things. And this Icons of Rock, which is cool, is that we're doing arenas, not here in the States, but we're doing arenas in South America. They've got some bookings in Europe and Spain in the near future. So, and a comic book's coming out too called The Icons of Rock. So I'm kind of just, I'm just letting the cards fall and just keep plugging at it,
Yeah.
I turned 70 this year. I'm no spring chicken, so.
Hey, Paul, I want to ask you.
My teeth and my hair and my voice, so. I'm very grateful.
Yeah. Paul, I want to ask you about the title track on the King Kobra record. And it seems to celebrate the scene you came from as a musician and that you're thankful that you can still do what you do. Now, if someone had asked you in the early 80s that you'd still be singing and performing the songs you're known for 40 years later, would you have told them they were crazy?
No, because I've seen it happen. That's why Jimi Hendrix, he just kind of lost it because he had to play Purple Haze all the time. But I've been very fortunate that Rough Cutt didn't have a big hit song. Quiet Riot, we got some radio play with Stay With Me Tonight, which, I think would have been, that record would have done better if we would have toured and we had a tour set up. But things didn't work out. Frankie's mother got ill and he was out with Wasp because he was making money instead of putting money out. When you go out on the road as a headliner, you have to spend some money. So I'm actually I did a remake of Dreamin' Again, very Latin style with percussion and strings and not a heavy version of it. I would say I wouldn't think I'd be playing some of the songs, but I'm grateful. What I've been doing is I find myself, because I was in Quiet Riot and one of the only few members that were on CBS, because after that, when I left the band didn't do any more records on a major label. They were on a small label. So I'm plagued with singing Come On Feel the Noise and Mental Health on a lot of things. So just recently we've added to the icons of classic rock, Dreamin' Again. I was doing that acoustically, and Don't Want to Be Your Fool, which I did on the Quiet Riot album.
Yeah.
So, I have a bunch of solo stuff that I did. I did some stuff with Jeff Northrop, Back on Track. There's some great songs on there. And even on Make-A-Wish, there's a ballad that it's called Make-A-Wish. And there's a video out there of it, and it's a ballad. And it's a really good song. However, I find myself, I want to do a record of just songs that I love. Songs I grew up listening to, my mom. Like I said, I would like to do a gospel record.
Paul, whose idea was it to do Love Hurts on the King Kobra record?
That was my idea.
Okay.
And We Are Warriors, basically, that was Carlos's idea, because I was kind of thinking of like the movie, and we did the video sort of like the We Are Warriors, the movie. But back in the 80s, you had Motley Crue, you had Rat, Dokken, and even I took some lines in the song, you're gonna bang your head. Come feel the noise, bang your head. We're gonna rock the night and wake the dead. I was trying to take a little tongue-in-cheek thing. You know, some people I on social media thought it was a little cheeky, but basically it's just kind of you know, I'm in a slick back Cadillac, wild and young. You keep me hanging on till Carmine didn't keep me hanging on. You know, so I kind of took, you know, these guys they're huge icons. I mean, I'm so honored to be performing with them. I mean, I saw Carmine on Hullabaloo and Ed Sullivan when I was a kid. You know, we're not that far apart in age, but still, I was playing music and I was going, wow, this version of, you know, You Keep Me Hanging On is so cool. And I was a big Vanilla Fudge, and then I was a big Jeff Bogart and a piece. I actually did a record with Vargas, a guy from Spain on Warner Brothers there, with Tim Bogart, Carmine, a piece. So it was Vargas, Bogart, and a piece featuring Paul Shortino. And we did a lot of cover songs, but we did some of the, we did Lady, a video. It's on YouTube of the Beck Bogart version, and I got to sing it my way, and I was so honored that I got to play with Tim Bogart. But yeah, Love Hurts. A friend of mine played the guitar work, a guy named Raj X, in the beginning of that song, and it was sitting around for a long time. It was Carmine's idea for that groove. But that front guitar work, all that acoustic, all that pretty guitar work in the very intro, was done by a dear friend who was a dear fan as well. And he passed away at 50 from cancer this year. And he's on the record. He's special thanks to Raj, who passed away. Incredible guitar player. He said, wait till these guitar players try to figure out how to play this intro. Because he did it, not just chords, he did intro, individual strings doing certain things. So it'll be interesting doing that live. But that's one of my favorite songs that I'm glad that we put on there.
Paul, I just got a couple of questions before I leave you go. I'm curious to know, did Frankie Vinali or anyone approach you at all to rejoin Quiet Riot after Kevin DeVreaux passed away?
No, Frankie actually, him and Carlos, I would have wanted if we would have done that, because Rudy was in the band when I first joined, before he joined Whitesnake, and we were working on the record. When I got in Quiet Riot, Chuck Wright was playing bass and left the band, and we recorded. I was playing bass, and so it was just a trio, and we were rehearsing basically where Guitar Center is now. That used to be, War used to own that building, and Charlie Chapman had a movie production company at that building, and the Dios bought that building, and ended up, Quiet Riot was rehearsing in that building, and during pre-production, and I brought Jimmy Waldo from Alcatraz into the picture, and then Frankie met Sean McNabb at the Cat House, and that's how we got a bass player. But Rudy joined the band for a while, and I have photos from the record company, and they were all excited. And I think it would have been cool for Frankie, myself, Rudy, and Carlos put Quiet Riot back together in that version. And but I think it was a control thing with shit.
Hey, Paul.
Oh, Lord, I tell you.
What is it, your dogs this time?
No, it was a damn year ago. So anyways, I think that would have been a great lineup.
Yeah.
And that would have been the real Quiet Riot. the second version of Quiet Riot, you know, because they really wanted to change the name a couple weeks before we released the album because it was so different. And once me and Carlos get the rights back to the, we're working on that right now for the album that we did together.
Okay.
I'd like to go in and fix some vocals and change some things around. So we'll probably do that. And yeah, I think that was, I think it was a control thing. Frankie had control of the situation, and you know, he went through a lot of singers. I mean, when I did that interview for that documentary that they did.
Yeah.
And we did some of it here in Las Vegas. And a lot of what I said was, it was very political, because they had one record that finished with Pasha when I joined the band. So they were keeping me away.
Oh, Magoo, you've done it again.
Have mercy.
Hey, Paul.
So they were getting, are we rolling? So here we go. I'll finish this up for you. They brought me in, and they didn't want to, we had 1 year, they had one album to finish with Pasha Records, and Spencer Popper, the producer. And then they wanted to go directly to CBS, their manager. Okay, the problem was that I was signed to Wendy Dio as management, and so was Jimmy Waldo, and we were doing pre-production, so Jimmy couldn't be in the band from Alcatraz. Sean McNabb wasn't in, he couldn't, they didn't, Warren didn't want Wendy to sign him because then she would have myself, Jimmy, and Sean, even though they were in the band, but they weren't the band. The band consisted of me, Carlos, and Frankie. But I believe that why things happened. I filled in for Kevin for 3 days, Rock Till You Drop tour with Jackal. Vince Neil was on it, Tesla, and they did some dates in Texas, and then we did outdoor events with Quiet Riot and Tesla and Jackal and Vince Neil. And then I came back home. I filled in for Kevin for those dates because Kevin, you know, I don't know what's going on with him, but he wasn't showing up for the gigs. And so Frankie called me out of the blue and asked me if I would, you know, come and fill in for Kevin. And that was the last time that I did anything with Kevin. I don't know what the relationship with Carlos and Kevin were, or Frankie were, but I don't think they left on good terms. So, you know, my whole thing was political because I was hid from the, we cut, once the producer heard my voice and everything, then we went in and cut 3 songs. Then we went into a year of litigation because they wanted, Spencer owned all of the publishing and everything. They signed a deal like the old Motown deal, Quiet Riot did. And then all of a sudden they became huge, and the only reason they became huge was because the producer picked the right songs for them. He picked Come On, Feel the Noise and put them over the top. And then the second big hit was, of course, you know, Mental Health, and then Slick Back Cadillac. There was a lot of good songs off that record. And so I really believe that it really just came down to them trying to keep me away from Spencer. So we went and cut 3 songs, Stay With Me Tonight, Your Time Is Gonna Come, and Big Changes. Carlos has those songs. A couple of those, I think Big Changes or Your Time Is Gonna Come was written by Russ Ballard, who wrote The Man in the Mirror.
Yep.
And one of the songs, I don't know if it was the Time Is Gonna Come, was like, Your Time Is Gonna Come, is almost like The Wild and the Young. dun, 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 dun. And they had, I didn't lose you, did I? Are you still there?
No, I'm still here, Paul. I'm here.
I don't trust these ears. So, anyways, Tommy Lee and Frankie did a drum off in the middle of that, like a solo drum off. And that song never made it to the record or big changes, but Carlos has some really good mixed demos of those, rough mixes of those. And I think we'll put those on that record that we did, QR, the fourth album, and re-release it. You know, I want to go in and fix some stuff that I did, but I like a lot of the things that Spencer made, you know, he got out of me to do. It was the first time where a producer just didn't say, go in there and sing and do your thing. You know, you got a great voice, go do what you do. Except for Jack Douglas told me how Steven Tyler wrote songs. And he scats. So I went in to do Rock the USA, so everybody stop your engines, stop it, let it roll. I was going to sing it like that. And he went out there and went, so, right? It says go home and write the lyrics to that. So I went home going, so everybody start your engines, stop it, let it roll. Everybody, everywhere tonight, we're going to rock and roll. Welcome to the Salt and Stripes tonight. It was like taking it to jazz. So he kind of like turned me on to a different way of writing melodies and lyrics because he had worked with John Lennon. He did a lot of the Aerosmith, Jack Douglas, did a lot of stuff. He was with John Lennon the night they dropped him off at the Dakotas and he was shot. So he shared some really crazy stories with us. But yeah, you know, I love still singing the songs I record. There's so many that I've done. I've done a lot of records. I got this whole record that's sitting around that me, Michael Voss, Phil Suzanne, and Carmine did. And eventually it'll probably be released, but there's some really good stuff on there. Yeah. And Michael's a good songwriter as well. But we did a record together called Chasing My Dreams. I've done, you know, Sacred Place, a solo record. Jimmy Crespo was on that. Brad Gillis, Carlos Cavallo. There's a lot of people on that record. I did a blues record that I want to go in and redo my vocals on it.
Okay. Paul, I got two questions left, and they're both about Ronnie James Dio. Right? What's the best piece of advice Ronnie James Dio ever gave to you that you still use today?
Always stay humble and meet your fans.
Okay. Now that
and take the time to be with those fans. Stay humble and always do your best. You know, get out there and sing your best. Always do your best, because that's one thing I will. And Ronnie was so confident of who he was in his voice that he gave Rough Cut, Whitesnake full power. You know, usually when you go out and you're warming up for a band, they hold back on the full power, and then when the main act comes up, they have full power, so it's a bigger impact. He wasn't insecure about any of that kind of stuff. Also, working with him in the studio was, we got to find Paul. We got to find Paul. We got to find who you are, and you need to be true to yourself. And those are the things I learned from Ronnie James Dio.
Paul, one of the things that I've gotten from interviews of people I've done over the years, and I've spoken to a lot of people who worked with Ronnie and who knew him, apparently he had an amazing ability in remembering people's names that he'd met in the past. Did you ever experience that firsthand?
Absolutely. That's one thing I try to remember too, and it's rough to do. Yeah. Saw a movie, and an Australian guy knew this young girl, and she was a snob. Well, somebody stole her purse and he got stabbed. Well, she didn't know his name. He saved her purse and she went to the hospital and she wasn't family. So they wouldn't let her know if he was okay or if he wasn't. And he had given her name, but she forgot it. And to me, that's something that's very important. I remember faces better than I remember names, but I certainly try to remember people's names. Ronnie was brilliant at it. And he was pretty much brilliant at everything. Yeah, he had a big heart.
Yeah.
You know, and he could be a tough guy when he was running the show, because you always have to have somebody that is, you know, strong and consistent. And that's one thing Ronnie James Dio was. He was a very strong, consistent. When he sang, he was strong and consistent. His voice was always strong and consistent.
Apparently, Paul, he never even warmed up before a show.
No.
He just went out and sang.
And I didn't either, you know. Yeah. I was so grateful. And we really hit it off, you know, me and him. I'm really miss the fact that I had a chance to. I had family that showed up the day that Carmine and everybody went to see Ronnie before he passed, and I was put in a position where I had family members that came out of town, and I couldn't really leave, but I wish I would have and saw Ronnie one last time before.
Yeah, well, Paul.
But in a way, I guess I'm kind of glad that I didn't, because I remember him, the strong, you know, the strong little man that he was, you know, with the big voice.
Yeah. Well, Paul, it's been a pleasure talking to you again.
You too, my friend, Richie, and let's stay in touch, okay?
I will.
All right, God bless you, Richie.
Right,
I'll talk to you soon, all right?
Yeah, take care.
Have a great life.
You too. Bye.
You too.
There you go, Richie's chat with Paul Shortino. Great album out now by King Kobra. Enjoying that one. And actually, truth be told, I almost forgot to do this episode this week. You know, I did the edits on Monday. I had all the audio all set, all lined up. And then I spaced it the entire week. So now it comes to Friday, and I'm going through some albums that I haven't put away yet. And then I'm looking at the King Kobra album, and I'm thinking, wait a minute. I got to put the freaking episode together. So that's when it was, all right, well, remind myself. And, so that's kind of where my head's been at this week. Just really busy to the point that, I could actually do all the audio on one day and space it the rest of the week about actually putting the show and mixing and mastering and getting it out. But thankfully, home early for a holiday weekend, going through some vinyl, and it triggered my little feeble metal skull this week. So there you go. You get some Focus on Metal for the Labor Day weekend here in the States, and the weekend everywhere else. So go and pick up your own copy of King Kobra, We Are Warriors, or even the Blue Dahlia album with our buddy Tracy G, or there's all kinds of other stuff Paul mentioned as well. Plenty of stuff to choose from. But anyways, for this week, that's it. There ain't no more. Stick a fork in it. This puppy is done. So for Richie, myself, and everybody else here at Focus on Metal, have yourselves a great metal week. And until we talk to you again next time, as always, remember...
Focus on Metal!
Everything else is insignificant.
You're still here? It's over. Go home.